My people, welcome back to the Open Play podcast. I'm going to be your host today, Ikena, aka Way United IK, joined by my co-host, Daye, aka Statman Daye. I would like to say that name has been approved by him. And Daye, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling very good, man. I'm excited to get right into this, man. Should be a really good part today.
Yes, sir. But before we do all of that, I would just like to ask that you guys hit that subscribe button and leave a like and comment on the video. And I would also be leaving the social media links in the description. So do with that what you may. But I would suggest that you follow us on social media. But with that, let's just get into the episode, man. So today we have another interesting topic on hand for you guys. Because today we're going to be discussing France and their attack. So as you guys can see on the screen, we have the France national team squad, and this was their last 11 versus, was it Azerbaijan? How do you pronounce it again? Azerbaijan?
Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan. And like I said, we're just going to be focusing on the attack in this episode. And I think it's safe to say that this is not the attack that France will be going to the World Cup with. So we're going to try and help France build the best attack. But Dave, before we get into that, I'm just going to ask you, like, what do you think about France and their attack? Like,
Well, I think if you ask me, like, truthfully, I think that this is probably one of the most stacked attacks in all of world football. Not only do I think that this is one of the most stacked teams in total, I think the attacking line has featured a glitter of all-star caliber, like elite forwards, and very few teams have a team that is so good that you can line up a second 11 that could be
mm,
just as competitive at the World Cup. And I think that if I'm being truthful, looking at what I have here in front of me, if we're going 4-2-3-1, I think this team like kind of picks itself. If we are going 4-3-3, I think it also just kind of picks itself. I don't think this is going to be a very long conversation because I don't think that the actual options here are a very long list. I think there are four players, if we're talking 4-2-3-1, who like immediately stand out in terms of how this is going to go.
yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of the more congested attacks in Europe. It's probably the most congested attack or most congested team actually in Europe.
Yeah.
But that can also be a problem because, like, it now becomes okay, who actually starts, and do you just put all the best players on the pitch and hope that they make something happen, or do you try and put out a team that actually has balance? Because that has been a problem in the past when teams are overstacked, whether in club or country. But that's what we're going to be trying to do today. We're going to try and build a team with the most balance. And you mentioned the formation. I'm going to ask, like, what formation do you think is best for this France team based on like what the lineup is looking like in your head?
It's kind of tough. I think if we are going with the player that's we're going to get to him very quickly because I think he's the easiest player to fit into the squad in terms of like he's the player that is going to be in this team no matter what. I think just based on that, the optimal formation is probably a 4-3-3, not a 4-2-3-1.
Mm,
Because we do need an extra man in midfield to compensate for that individual.
I don't agree. I guess you have to come
Let's
to an
hear it. Let's
agreement.
let's 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 hear it. So give me
Yeah.
give me the give me the case for a 4-2-3-1.
So
Give me
I'm
the
not even
case.
looking at a 4-2-3-1. This was just their last lineup in
Okay.
their last game. But
So what
I'm
will
never
you go
looking at
with?
a 4-2-3-1. I'm looking at more of either a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2-2. Because, with France, I feel like most of their games that I've watched in recent times, they have been going with, like, that pivot in midfield, and then, they just stick up all the other attackers, which is why we're trying to, like, create a balanced 11. So I think it's safe to say that France will be going into the World Cup with a pivot instead of like a three in midfield. So I think we should base it around what France might be going into it with. Like, it can either be a 4-2-3-1, but based on what I have in my head, my suggested 11 is either a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2-2.
My thing is that, and we can probably just get the elephant out of the room. Kylian Mbappe is not going to do a lot of pressing in this team. He never
Definitely.
does. And I feel like we have to make some sort of concessions for that.
Mm,
Having maybe, okay, so we're saying having four players whose job it is to primarily get into forward areas is a lot. Probably not so much in every game. I think I agree with you in that early in the tournament, it's not going to be as much of an issue, and you can probably field as many of your best players as possible and not to worry about the structure
Mm-hmm.
because they have so much quality across the pitch that you don't have to necessarily worry about how this all fits. You just let elite players go out and figure it out against sides that you have an expectation to be beaten out, and you
Mm-hmm.
also like kind of get an opportunity to figure out what your optimal lineup is like in games where like against Spain, against England, against these teams that are of a similar caliber, both tactically and talent wise. I do agree that probably you have to go to something that is a little more systemic. So for now, I think sure we'll go let's go with a 4-2-2-2-2. The triple
Yeah.
two triple two, yeah, let's go with that. Let's go
So
with
we're
that.
good to go with a 4-2-2-2. But I do agree with you though. I do agree that when you go against like a team like Spain or England or something that have the talent and does the tactical acumen that your team has, like you have to be, I don't know the word to use, but you just have to be better in general. Like we watched the Euro semi-finals, France versus Spain, and in that game they tried to field their best attackers. Like they tried to field everybody. Like it was Olise in calm, Dembele right wing, Doué left wing, and Mbappe in strike. And in that game, Doué and Olise had like terrible games. And in my opinion, like I just feel like I'm not rocking with the idea of trying to field players just for fielding's sake. Like fielding a player in like Olise in calm just tells me that you're just trying to put him on the pitch just because he's a good player. And as much as good players should be on the pitch, if it's not going to bring anything to the team, then there's no point of doing it because in that game, Dewey and Olise were terrible. Let's just call it what it is. They were terrible in that game. They didn't show up whatsoever. But it's like, is that really their fault or is that the fault of like the manager for like, just trying to like field all their best players on the pitch at the same time? Like, I'm all for that. I'm all for exciting football, but you want to win these games, you want to win these tournaments. And I feel like, you just have to create like a balanced 11. Play, if you want to play 4-2-3-1, play an actual calm, play an actual right winger and right wing, and then just cook from there. So that's actually why I'm going with this 11 because I feel like with this you can create like the most balanced attack, at least for now. Like, depending on the team that you play, I think it's going to vary based on the team that are playing. But in my head, this is like what can create the most balance, especially because of Mbappe, who we all know is getting on this 11. I feel like I did this actually for him, and I'll explain why as we go along. But I mean, we can just go ahead and I'll actually just go ahead and put Mbappe in the lineup. Like we know Mateta is not going to be in this team. Some people might look at this and think, oh, like you can also put Mbappe on the left. But I think we've kind of addressed the fact that Mbappe is just not really a left winger. And
Correct.
I think that, he's actually more of like a second striker. Like I know that's not really like a role in the team. But the reason why I imagine France with like, two up top is because of the way I know Mbappe likes to play, because of the way I know he likes his striker or whoever is next to him to play. And we had this conversation before and, we came to a conclusion that Mbappe is just not a left winger. So I just feel like, playing a 4-2-3-1, do you play Mbappe in strike or do you play him in left wing? Because he's also not a striker, so he's not a lone striker. So like it's like when I think about all these other formations, when I think about a 4-3-3 as well, it's like, do I play him in strike or do I play him in left wing? I feel like that's a problem that Mbappe kind of creates. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think you pointed out all the really important stuff that this is just not a winger. I don't think this is a winger in any capacity at this point anymore. Like I think Mbappe as a winger hasn't been a thing since maybe his first year at PSG.
Mm-hmm.
He just does not enjoy the pressing requirements that come out of a winger and a striker are just vastly different. And I think it is easier to coast in the middle of the pitch than it is in wide areas, especially now where there is such a requirement for fullbacks to get involved in build up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that it is very easy to bypass strikers in the press. That it doesn't really matter all too much. Or rather, it's easier to like if a striker is pressing, it's easier to bypass that than it is wingers or fullbacks, just because of what is required out of those positions. So it has allowed Mbappe for a very long time to do everything that he does well on the ball and offensively when the team is building up, but he
Mm,
also does, take some time off when it comes to pressing. Like he's not a very active presser. He's not
yeah.
going to contribute defensively, and you're just not going to get that kind of player out of him. In fact, I even think that the more interesting question here, because I think we'll get on to who. I just think that there's only one player that's it makes sense to partner with him here. And so I want to ask you, do you think it makes sense for him to play on this left hand side of as a striker or on the right? Because I think that the person that makes the most sense to team up with him here is Marcus Thuram. It's like it's the most to
Oh.
me, it's the guy that makes the most sense. I would really love to put Ekitike here, just because of how much I think Ekitike is good at self-creation.
Mm-hmm.
He can play in the channels. He's a far more interesting carrier as a sort of like a half winger
Mm,
in terms that in fact I would actually argue that Ekitike does a lot of the stuff that I think a lot of people think Mbappe does, in the
mm-hmm.
sense that he is more of a player that you could imagine playing as a left wing full time, but that you shouldn't anyways, because I just think that all the hold up stuff, all the self creation, all the like really elite technical qualities he has just fits as a player that can do both, and that is one of the reasons that Liverpool signed him and have exploited that constantly because of how good he is in terms of getting all those things done. I do
Mm.
just don't think it is realistic to expect him to play beside Mbappe, just because I think number one, Thuram has experience and has had success playing with Mbappe as his partner in attack, and Thuram just does a lot of like dirty work that you expect out of a striker. He's a really willing presser. He knows how to play in it too. He does it all the time with Arturo Martinez at club level for Inter Milan. He he also still gets all the like full winger stuff out of him where he's comfortable in the channels. He's not like as technically sound as Ekitike, but he is still like a very insane hold up player.
Mm.
So I wanted to ask you, do you have Ekitike aside? So forget Ekitike now, because I think those are probably the two biggest candidates. Outside of Ekitike and Turam, do you have anybody else that you think should be vying for this position? And do you think it makes more sense to play Mbappe in the left striker role, or would you see him on the right?
Hmm. So to answer your first question, the only other player that I even considered, but I'm not going with him, is Usman Dembele. But I just feel like with the type of player Mbappe already is, that will just cause major problems. So the two players I actually had in mind were Thuram and Ekitike, but I kind of went with Ekitike, but I'll explain my reasoning for that after I answer your second question, which is, should Mbappe play in the left or should he play in the right channel? I think the left. I wanted to ask, why do you think the right channel makes more sense?
Because Ekitike and Thuram are typically two players that play on the left channel as well. There needs
Mm,
to be some level of accommodation. Like I know Mbappe is not going to do any of the pressing or defensive work, but and I know he's the best player. I know he's your captain. I know all these things, but he needs to do some level of accommodation. So does playing those guys in their more preferred aspects of the pitch, so that you can still do all the things that make you great, but just in a slightly different angles, because I know right footers love to play on the left because it allows them to come in on their
yeah.
preferred foot. But is there some level of accommodation that we do have to make here? Because you're still asking a lot out of your partner. So are you going to make the accommodation where you slide over to the right, gets the angles are not as favorable for what you want to do, but you're still going to be able to coast a little bit more. You're still going to be, because like I love Mbappe. I think Mbappe is probably one of the best players on the planet. He's probably if not one of the three best players on the planet at any given time going into any season. But this conversation of having to consider if he is going to do this or that
Yeah.
because of specific quirks in his game is a
Hmm.
kind of frustrating thing that any manager has to make. So I wanted to get your mindset as to if that is even on the table, or if we're just saying that this guy is going to get everything he wants and everybody else just has to feel along.
Bro, you know me, yeah, and you know I'm a Madrid fan, and this problem that you're talking about is what I've been going through all season. I've made multiple videos about it. I've talked about it on numerous occasions, and having a player like Mbappe, yes, he's the best player in the world. Yes, he'll score you how many goals a season, but he's so frustrating because you have to make so many accommodations. I feel like one of the main reasons why this episode is even like a major topic is because of Mbappe. We're thinking about which players actually like partner Mbappe the best, which players make it easier for Mbappe to do his thing, right? And that can be very, very, very frustrating. I do think that like there is room for him to play on the right, but I would say that like the reason why I pick someone like Ekitike to partner him is because I know the type of player that Ekitike is, I know the type of player that Mbappe is, and I feel like they actually complement each other well to the sense that like there does have to be a certain amount of accommodation for each other, but at the same time, I feel like because their profiles kind of linked to a certain degree, I do feel like it can just work. Like I was watching the friendly versus sorry, not the friendly, the World Cup qualification versus Azerbaijan. Um, this was the one before, like this was the 3-1, I think. The one before the most recent one was Mbappe and Ekitike partnering each other in that game, and in the first half of that game Ekitike kind of struggled. And the reason why he struggled is because Mbappe was doing his regular thing, dropping deep, going to the left, going to the right, just going all around the pitch, while Ekitike was left to kind of like be the guy occupying defenders in the first half. All of the first half, that's all he was doing. So he barely got on the ball, barely got involved in the game, and it was just kind of like a problem for him. However, in the second half, Ekitike came out, and I don't know if they talked to each other in the dressing room. I don't know if the Shams had a conversation with them. I don't know what happened, but Ekitike started doing his own thing as well. Ekitike decided to do the whole dropping deep, decided to do the whole drifting to the channels, all of that, right? And what I actually noticed in that game was that Mbappe and Ekitike were actually switching roles. Like, so sometimes Mbappe would do his dropping deep, going to the channels, and Ekitike would actually be the guy occupying the defenders. Or Ekitike, when he does the whole dropping deep and everything, Mbappe is the guy occupying defenders. And that actually worked so well. When they started doing that, it worked so well. I think that if you want to get the best out of Mbappe, you have like a player like Giroud or something like that, just like sitting there occupying defenders and then just allowing Mbappe to do his thing. But if you want to get the best out of the team in general, you have both of them kind of doing that, kind of like switching roles. I think that's when you actually create the most balance. If you watch Real Madrid as well, it's kind of like the same thing. This is kind of why Vini kind of struggles at Madrid because Vini, if you watch Real Madrid, you notice that sometimes Vini is in that strike role and he's just left to kind of be the guy trying to occupy defenders, and that's so that Mbappe can do his own thing. But that type of thing can kind of take away from like the strengths of players around you, and that has kind of caused Vini problems. We're talking about the downfall of Vini since his Ballon d'Or season. These are the type of things that you notice when you watch Real Madrid and you say that okay, this is why Vini is struggling. Vini is struggling because of these accommodations that he's having to make for Mbappe, and you say that and you're like, oh, but Mbappe is scoring 50 goals a season. Yes, but at the same time, like you're looking at how all the other players around him are struggling. There was a stat that came out talking about like the amount of goals that Mbappe has scored versus the amount of goals that Madrid players have scored this season. The difference between that and the 23-24 season when Mbappe wasn't there is very, very, very different. So Mbappe does create problems like that, but however, I think that Ekitike is someone that can partner him well. Whoever is trying to drop deep at the time, they can kind of like be wherever they are and allow the other person to kind of like do their own thing. So I feel like Ekitike is the guy that makes that less of a problem, which is why I went to someone like Ekitike.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately fair. I think that we can still go with that. Um, yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think your reason is sound. I think you know Mbappe does create so many problems that it's just like, who do you even partner next to him that just makes it less of a problem? And this is just another topic that I was talking about with you about how Mbappe just kind of like struggles to play with strikers. And if you're not a Giroud type who is just okay with like setting up, with like just like kind of sitting back and maybe not doing much except for occupying defenders and just tapping the ball to Mbappe or something like that, then you're not really going to enjoy playing with him. Like it's just not going to happen. But I just feel like someone like Ekitike can kind of make the most of for himself when playing with Mbappe than any other person that might partner him in strike. So that's why I went with Ekitike.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that last point that you had there about being comfortable, not being like the guy, is why like I really like Thuram because Thuram is used to it at club level. He
Mm.
defers to Laturo all the time. He's comfortable in build up. He likes being. He doesn't have any issues being the guy that sets up the guy, and He's like, I'm just looking over his stats since he got to Inter. 7 assists in Syria in 23-24, 4 assists in uh 24-25, but seven in all competitions. And then this season he already has five, but three in the league in his 17 appearances. It's these, of course, assists are not the end all be all. I mean, there'll be better stats to quantify his contribution, especially in build up. So that's the only reason why I really had him there. But I'm fine with Ekitike. I don't think it's ideal, and I think that that's kind of what this entire conversation is about.
Mm.
But I think Ekitike works just fine here.
Yeah, I agree. But we'll have to move on to another problem position, I would say, which is right wing, because there are a lot of players in that position. There is Usman Dembele, a Ballon d'Or winner, Olise, who is having, I don't want to say a Ballon d'Or winning season, but a very good season that is good to get him, that can potentially get him top 10 of the Ballon d'Or list. And you have someone like Czechia as well, who has been playing well for Manchester City. You think who actually fits best in this formation? But what do you think?
So I think you and I have very different approaches to this. I don't think this is much of a conversation. The answer is Michael Olise. Olise should be starting for this team
Oh,
on Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and twice on Sunday. He has been probably the best winger in all of football. Just looking at the numbers, 10 goals, 15 assists. Um, there is not a player right now that just, maybe with the exception of like Lamine Yamal, who is just such a creative dynamo, who does everything you want out of a player. Like his ten goals have come from 8.06 xG, like expected assists XA 0.68 is a 100th percentile number. He's creating 1.16 big chances. That's 97th percentile. 83rd percentile in successful crosses, which is not even really the major aspect of his game. Like 2.26 successful dribbles, 85th percentile, and these are all against Bundesliga forwards.
yeah.
And like I can understand that a lot of this you can argue is just what happens when you play for Bayern Munich.
Mm.
But the level of which he's operating at right now, I think this is just the position. Like you have to reward great players for having great seasons and putting up 25 goal contributions in 20 matches, looking like an all-world winger. You said top 10. I think he's top five at this moment. I think
Mm.
he's doing that good. Like he's so obscenely good. There are questions about some of the out of position stuff, and I do think that it is a fair point to say that. But I just don't think that the difference between someone like an Usman Dembele or Ryan Sheki is not going to offer that much more out of
Yeah.
possession than Olise is. And then you're left with Dembele, who probably has a case to start, but I just don't think has been nearly as consistent as he was last season where he won the Ballon d'Or. 5 goals, 3 assists, 12 games. Like there's still a bit. I believe he got injured earlier in the season. There's still a bit of rust that he's kind of still shaking off. For me at this point, I think he would still be the kind of guy that you can bring off the bench. But to me, this is I feel like this is just the Michael Olise thing. You go out there and you let this guy do what he does best. Um, and like I said, there's no hard working elite right wingers at France right now in the mold of like a ultra presser like that is just going to compensate for what you do out of possession. I think that you just need to get the best player in that slot right now, and I just think that's Michael Olise.
So
But
that
I
that
wonder what
comes
you
down
think.
to a question I actually do want to ask you, right? Like,
Hmm.
do good seasons actually warrant a place in the team, especially like a national team, or does the manager go with what he knows? Does the manager go with the experience? Does the manager go with someone that has actually won the World Cup with, like, because in my head, yeah, like as much as Elise is having a great season, you mentioned all the stats. We like this, like you said, like this can be a potential like top five Ballon d'Or season. We can be talking about him in the top three if we go further into the season. But like, does that warrant him to start over Dembele, who the manager knows, who the manager clearly trusts, who even in his worst form in his career, he'll still get called up for the team? Like, because this is the World Cup. This isn't, I don't want to belittle any tournament, but this isn't like the Nations League or anything. This is the World Cup. This is, I know you, I know what you can bring to my team. Yes, he has played with Olise, but like he knows Dembele. And I just feel like that experience can really come in handy. I was talking about it in the last episode with you that I've grown to like value experience more and more. This is not even about his form. This is about like who who do you actually trust more? Do you trust this guy, yes, who is putting up all these stats, all these numbers, or do you trust someone that's actually been within the team?
I think you still need to value the guy who is playing and who's performing. Like I understand the case for Ousmane Dembele here. That this is still a guy that has been with Deschamps and knows the French national team and has done all the things that he's done. Like he's won a World Cup. Like he's been part of a World Cup winning squad. Like he's the kind of guy that you can rely on because he's been there and he's done that. But I do think it also matters like to pick guys who are playing. And Dembele has had a very up and down season where he's played, he's got injured, he's played, he's got injured, he's got injured. Like he's not been, and it's not like when he's played, he's been like at the level he was at last season, where like we're looking at like an all-world, like this is a perennial winger. Like
Yeah,
he's still been elite. Don't get it twisted. But I don't think he's I don't think he would like if the season ended today, like Usman Dembele is not finishing in the top 20 of the Ballon d'Or. Like we are not talking about a Ballon d'Or winning winger right now. Whereas Michael Olise is doing everything right. He's hit that echelon where we're discussing him as a very different winger. I think many people would say that he's probably the best right winger on the planet at this moment. On that level with Lamine Yamal, which I just think that, of course, Lamal is just a very different athlete. So that would probably be the only player that you would say comfortably, like, yeah, this is the guy that, is on the level or better. So I think that having a guy who has been this good, is doing so this well in this window, you need to have some kind of, I don't want to call it a reward system, but you have to take advantage of when players are playing well. Football
mm,
is as much experience as it is with taking guys who are doing everything right at this moment. And I think that if Olise goes to the rest of the season and plays at this level throughout the entire season, potentially sets himself up for a Ballon d'Or, wins it. Like if Bayern Munich win the Champions League, they win the league, and they do the double in those two regards. And he plays a very big hand. I think it is very, very difficult to go to the international stage and tell that guy that, I need you to pay second fiddle to a guy who did not play nearly as much and that who you have definitely been better than across the course of the season. So
mm.
that would be my case to like really, really put Olise here. Like I think that this is the guy you go with.
I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I think you put up a very strong argument. I can see how it would be hard to ignore a player like Olise in a potential, like, top three Ballon d'Or winning season. Dembele is obviously not having the season that he had last season, but we can all agree that that's probably never going to happen again. He's never really going to play to that level again. In my head, Dembele should be starting, but I can't lie, you made a good argument, so I would go with Olise. But I would say that that does make my decision for the left winger a lot easier because at first I was kind of trying to decide who actually starts in that left wing. But now that we're going with Olise, who his off the ball work is not the greatest, and Mbappe, who we all know is not going to do the most off the ball work, I feel like Dewey has to be the starter in this team because of his off
No,
the ball work, because of
no arguments.
his work rate. So you agree with me?
I completely agree. No argument
Yeah,
whatsoever. No
just
argument
because like
whatsoever.
you have two players who we all know are not really going to do the most. So it's like let's at least have someone that we know is going to do the most. Let's have someone that's going to sacrifice himself for the team and who still has that bit of like humbleness because he knows it's not to the level of these players. So he's going to want or have to do that work to make up for the fact that he doesn't have the quality of these players just yet.
Yeah. And another reason why I really like to do it here is that um has shown propensity to take set pieces while at PSG. Can play on either side of the wing.
Hmm.
Just a very like just this is like the definition of what like a team player is. But like not just like not just to dumb his game down, just to be like a really good team player. Like we're still talking about like a very, 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 very good young winger. And I think even good is like still like being very generous. Like I think the season we saw from him last year in the Champions League campaign, it was just like one of the elite forwards around. Like so we're still talking about somebody who like brings a lot to the table. Last season, 6 goals, 6 assists in League One after starting only 18 games. So we're still talking about someone who is going to contribute. He's going to give you a lot. Um, you would like him to have put a little more minutes into tank because I think he's only played around 586 minutes. So we still need to get him a little bit up to speed. But I think I completely agree with you here that this is the kind of profile that you want because of everything he does after possession. He's still going to give you all the same contributions attacking wise because he's just that impressive. He's an elite dribbler. Um, so no, I definitely agree. This would be the guy I would go with. But the fact that this is as difficult as a conversation as it is a testament to how deep this front line is. Like there's still a lot of players that we didn't even get to. Like I know
Exactly.
Kolomani is having a bad year, but that's still like a pretty good, reliable French player. You have Storm Kingsley Coman, who's been called up in the last 12 months. You have your Bradley Barcolas, your Matetas, your Akliush, your Florent Tuvon, who's having a great season, playing us this season. So this is still a very, very, very experienced team. They will have so many options at the World Cup. Deschamps is going to be he's not going to be fraught for talent in that position. And yeah, it should be really exciting to see what they do this season.
Yeah, I agree. But at the moment, right now, this is our best attack for France. But that's just our own opinion. Let's know what you guys think about it in the comments. Do you agree? Do you think that Olise should be starting over Dembele? Do you think that Ekitike should be starting over Thuram? Do you value form over experience? These are all things that we talked about. So let's know all of that in the comments. And please, like we said in the start of the video, subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy our episodes. Also, leave us a follow on social media. I'll be leaving the links in the description. But with that comes the end of this episode. Taye, how are you feeling about this?
This was good, man. This was a good conversation, man. Really look forward to the next one. Really look forward to
Yeah.
the next one.
And I look forward to seeing you guys there as well. See you guys later. Safe.